Hey, shalom, shalom from your Dutch Uncle John, here to tell you what it is with Jonah and the dog. You know, how many sermons are out there on Jonah? And I don't know, I just think it's a much deeper book than we give it credit. So let's just get into it. This is some really cool stuff. Jonah 1:1. It says, "The word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying." Just to put in perspective where Jonah fits on the whole picture here, King David was about 1000 BC. Jonah is around 800 BC. Jonah was a prophet up in the northern tribes. The northern tribes, you know, got taken away by the Assyrians in around 730 so BC, and then the Babylonians took the southern tribes about 600 BC. Or, yeah. So, the tribes are all still in Israel when Jonah is prophesying. That's the point, okay? It's all BC also. The word Jonah in Hebrew is Yonah, and it means dove. That's an important piece. Keep it in mind. Okay. We see this back in Genesis 8:8. Remember, Noah sent out a dove from the ark to see if the water was abated from the face of the land. Okay, same word, Yonah, dove. Now, it says that the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai. Amittai means, if you break it down, it's got truth in the word. You see, Amet, remember, Aleph, Mem, Tav. So, his father's name is truth, Jonah's. That's interesting. And the word truth in Hebrew, I've shown you this a few times, but notice, to spell the word truth, you need an Aleph, which is the first letter, you need a Mem, which is the middle letter, and you need a Tav, which is the last letter. And if you want to know the truth, you look at the beginning, you look at the middle, you look at the end, look at the whole picture, and you will see the truth. And the word Amet, truth, if you take the Aleph out, Aleph, remember, is God's letter, Amet minus God, truth minus God, equals Met, which is the word in Hebrew for death. And you also notice that every letter of the word Amet stands on two legs, which Deuteronomy 19:15 says, "On the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses, a matter shall be confirmed." It's just interesting how God wove all that clever stuff in there. In 2 Kings 14:25, it says, "He, Jeroboam, restored the border of Israel from the entrance of Hamath as far as the Sea of Arabah, according to the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, which he spoke through his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet who is from Gath-Hepher." I just want to point out here, there's some commas in here, who is the prophet here? It was he spoke through his servant Jonah, comma, the son of Amittai, comma, the prophet who is from Gath-Hepher. Jonah is the prophet here, and he's the son of Amittai. So those are the pertinent pieces of information here. Jonah is a prophet, and Jonah is the son of Amittai, and he's from the Galilee. This is way up in the north, from a town called Gath-Hepher. Gath is wine press. You'll see that Gath will come up again when we get to Goliath and David. Goliath is from Gath, but not Gath-Hepher, a different Gath. But Gath means wine press. Heifer is digging, so it's the wine press of digging. And why this is even important, that it's pointing out here that Jonah is a prophet. In the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah, in John 7:52, Jesus is talking to this group, and they answered him, and they said, "You are not also from Galilee, are you? Search and see that no prophet arises out of Galilee." This is what the learned men are saying to Jesus, throwing up in his face. "You call yourself a prophet, Jesus? Don't you know no prophet came out of Galilee?" Now, if anybody should know this, it should be the learned men of Israel. They should know whether or not a prophet came out of the Galilee. And they do know. They know that Jonah's from Galilee. So they're just blatant, out and out lying to Jesus on this point. Okay. All right, and speaking of a prophet, there are 4 requirements for being a prophet. 1, you have to have insight. You have to see what's happening in the world. And 2, you have to have foresight. You have to be able to see what will happen. Number 3, you need to have a compassion and a desire to warn people. And 4, you need to have the courage to actually go and warn people. Okay? So, I hope we all become prophets and obtain those traits. All right, Matthew 12:39. In the New Testament, Yeshua refers to Jonah. He says, "But he, Jesus, answered and said to them, an evil and adulterous generation craves for a sign, yet no sign will be given to it, but the sign of Jonah the prophet." There. It's settled. Jonah is a prophet. What better witness do we need than Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, God Almighty, Yahweh on earth? If he says Jonah is a prophet, next, Jonah is a prophet. Okay. Now, I want you to look, as we're going through this, there's going to be some parallels happening between Jonah and Israel. If we just the first verse, the word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai, saying, so we know that Jonah was chosen by God. And in Deuteronomy 14:2, it says, "For you are a holy people to the Lord your God, and the Lord has chosen you to be a people for his own possession out of all the peoples who are on the face of the earth." So, we have both Jonah and Israel are both chosen by God. Verse 2, "Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness has come up before me." Verse 3, "But Jonah rose up to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So he went down to Joppa, found a ship which was going to Tarshish, paid the fare, and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of Yahweh." Okay, Tarshish, scholars have debated where Tarshish is. Some say it's southern Spain, and I have no idea. But you're getting on a boat in the Mediterranean in Israel, and you're heading west. Okay, so whether it's in the Mediterranean or England or who knows. But Jonah is fleeing where he's supposed to go. He's told to go to Nineveh. Nineveh is up northern Iraq today. All right. By the way, I did some investigation. Here is the ship's manifest for that day I found. There's Jonah. His citizenship is Ibrit, Hebrew. And the reason for trip, he put fleeing God. Okay, it's interesting. God told him to go to Nineveh. Nineveh is full of pagan Gentiles. Jonah doesn't want to go there. He wants to go to Tarshish, which is full of pagan Gentiles. There must be levels of pagan Gentiles. That Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh's, but he's okay with going to Tarshish. Well, if Tarshish is in the south of Spain, the Costa del Sol, I understand. Okay. Hosea 11:5. They will not return to the land of Egypt, but Assyria. He will be their king, because they refuse to return to me. So here, it's being prophesied that Assyria is going to come in and take those northern tribes away. Okay? Jonah is prophesying before that happened. I want you to understand. Okay. In Amos 5:27, therefore I will make you go into exile beyond Damascus, says the Lord, whose name is the God of hosts. So here we have just another prophecy that those northern tribes are going to be taken into captivity by Assyria. It hasn't happened yet during Jonah's time, but it's going to happen. Okay? And Nineveh is the capital of Assyria. They're the ones who are going to take the northern tribes. And Jonah is prophesying before that happens. Okay, now these names, Nineveh and Tarshish, they're ancient, more ancient names. Okay, if you go back to Noah, chapter 10, it says, these are the records of the generations of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah. And sons were born to them after the flood. This is what they call the Table of Nations. In chapter 10 of Genesis, he lists 70 nations. And you can trace back people of today. Who are these people? And they all go back to these 70 children of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And you'll notice Japheth, he had a son named Jayan, J-A-Y-A-N, I don't know, and he had a son named Tarshish. So Tarshish is a Gentile group from the son of Japheth. All right? The sons of Ham were Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. Here, Cush is modern-day Ethiopia, Sudan. Mitzrayim is Egypt. Put is Libya, Algeria, North Africa. Canaan became Israel. You notice how every modern place is going to trace back to one of these descendants of Noah. And it says, it goes on to say in verse 7, the sons of Cush were, and it lists a bunch of them, and Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be the mighty one on earth. Nimrod, remember, he's the one who built the Tower of Babel in Shinar. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. And look here, verse 10:10. The beginning of Nimrod's kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Asad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. From that land he went forth into Assyria, and built Nineveh, and Rehoboth-ir, and Calah, and that is a great city. Nineveh is a city that was built originally by Nimrod of Tower of Babel fame. And now it's gotten very big, and it is the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Got it? So you can see Tarshish and Nineveh are both cities that are descendant from Ham and Japheth, descendants from Noah's two Gentile sons. The Jonah is Jewish. He's going to be descendant from Shem. He's a Semite. Got it? Okay, so for some reason, the Nineveh pagan Gentiles are bad, the Tarshish pagan Gentiles are good, and we're going on. Verse 2, arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness has come up before me. So he's got a job to do. Jonah was commissioned by God. Well, so is Israel. It says in Isaiah 43:10, you are my witnesses, declares Yahweh, and my servant whom I have chosen, so that you may know and believe me, and understand that I am he. Before me no God was formed, nor will there be one after me. So God commissioned Jonah, God commissioned Israel to spread his word. Okay, verse 2 and 3 together here. I want you to listen to what it says here. Verse 2, arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah rose up to flee to Tarshish from the presence of Yahweh. So he went down to Joppa, found the ship which was going to Tarshish, paid the fare, and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of Yud-He Vav-He. Notice there's a lot of arising and going up when he's instructed to go and to do what God wanted him to do. But Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh, so Jonah goes down to Joppa, and then he goes down into the boat. When you're disobeying God, you see everything is going down. And that word for going down is yarad. Yared. Yared is the sixth person in the Bible. Yared means to go down, right? It comes from the river Jordan. Jordan is to flow down. These words are all related and they sound similar. Okay, so Jonah rose up and flee to Tarshish. Jonah is disobeying the will of God. Well, if you look in Judges 2:11, it said, then the sons of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals. No different than Israel. They are both disobeying the will of God. Verse 4, the Lord hurled a great wind on the sea, and there was a great storm on the sea, so that the ship was about to break up. Then the sailors became afraid, and every man cried to his God, and they hurled the cargo which was in the ship into the sea to lighten it for them. But Jonah had gone down into the hold of the ship, lain down, and fallen asleep. The word for asleep, by the way, is radam, and it still has that RD sound in it, the same you had for yared, the RD. Anything associated with down, you're going down asleep, you're going down in the boat. Okay? Vayeradam. He was fast asleep. Okay? It comes from that same kind of root word, to go down. But just notice that everything related to disobeying God, going down is disobeying God, right? That's the picture. Okay, verse 5. Then the sailors became afraid, and every man cried to his God. The word for sailor here is malak. It's a mem, lamed, chet. Okay? It's interesting, the same spelling is melach, which in Hebrew is salt. It's the word for sailor and the word for salt are spelled the same and pronounced closely the same. I'm not the pronunciation king here. All right. And in English, the word sailor, the word salt, is a nickname for the word sailor. Right? It's the same. Verse 6. So the captain approached him and said, how is it you are sleeping? Get up, call on your God. Perhaps the God will be concerned about us so that we will not perish. So Jonah's down in the bottom of the boat sleeping, and look what the captain says to him. Call on your God, perhaps Ha-Elohim, the God, will be concerned about us. That's very interesting that he's not just saying perhaps your God will be concerned, or perhaps a God, or perhaps my God. He says perhaps the God. I don't know if he knows which one the God is, but he's pointing the fact that there is the one and only God, and hope and perhaps the one and only God will be concerned about us. That's nice coming from the Gentile captain of this boat. You understand? And it's interesting, we may not see that in the English, but in the Hebrew, it's the Elohim, Ha-Elohim. Did Jonah call on his God? No, Jonah's down in the bottom sleeping, right? Verse 7. Each man said to his mate, come, let us cast lots, so that we may learn on whose account this calamity has struck us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. Then they said to him, tell us now, on whose account has this calamity struck us? What is your occupation? And where do you come from? What is your country? And from what people are you? They're giving him the fifth degree here. Notice in these parallels between Jonah and Israel, Jonah is found among the Gentiles. All these sailors and the captain, they're all Gentiles. So you have Jonah found among the Gentiles. And in Deuteronomy 4:27, it says, Yahweh will scatter you, talking to the Jews, he will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be left few in number among the nations where Yahweh drives you. You see a parallel there? The Jews, Israel is going to disobey God, and Israel is going to be scattered among the nations, among the Gentiles. So both Jonah and Israel are found there. Verse 9, Jonah said to them, I am a Hebrew, and I fear Yahweh Elohim of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. Then the men became extremely frightened, and they said to him, how could you do this? For the men knew he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them. So they said to him, what should we do to you, that the sea may become calm for us? For the sea was becoming increasingly stormy. He said to them, verse 12, lift me up and hurl me into the sea. Then the sea will become calm for you. For I know that on account of me this great storm has come upon you. Notice we talked about this at the beginning. All the lift up, arise, get up, right? If you're doing God's will, or you're doing what he wants, it's up, up, up. And here is the Hebrew word. He says, lift me up and hurl me into the sea. Lift up is the word in Hebrew. It's a noon, a shin, and an aleph, pronounced nasa, to lift up. I think it's kind of a coincidence that we call our space agency NASA. And what do? They lift up rockets. Jonah 1:13. However, the men rowed desperately to return to land, but they could not, for the sea was becoming even stormier against them. Notice, they are trying to row out of this problem. There's a parallel there, because we get into these problems in life and we're going to solve it ourselves, and we're in the middle of this storm and we got to get out of this, and we're going to row ourselves to safety. And we're in the middle of the ocean in a rowboat. What? You understand? You cannot depend on yourself to get you out of these storms. And it's kind of shown in Ephesians 2:8 and 9. I love this verse. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is a gift of God, not of works, so that no one may boast. You don't save yourself. It's God is going to save you. It's his grace that's going to save us. You understand? And these sailors they hadn't recognized this yet, because they're Gentile sailors, right? They're rowing and rowing and rowing to try to get out of the storm. Verse 14, then they called on Yahweh and said, this is the Gentile sailors, Then they called on Yahweh and said, we earnestly pray, O Lord, do not let us perish on account of this man's life, and do not put innocent blood on us. For you, O Yud-He-Vav-He, have done as you have pleased. So they lifted up Jonah and hurled him into the sea, and the sea stopped its raging. Isn't it interesting? One bad guy caused all that storm. It's like one bad apple ruins the whole basket, right? In the New Testament, do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump of dough? Leaven is sin, right? You put a little yeast, you put a little bit of that in a lump of dough, and it permeates through, and the next thing you know, the whole lump is bad. Okay, that's what's happening on this ship. They got one little bad guy, and he's caused all this problem. Okay, that's what's in 1 Corinthians 5:6 was the leaven thing. And notice, these sailors, they are saved How? By the death of a Jew. That sounds familiar. You see a parallel there? We, like these sailors, we Gentiles, we are saved by the death of a Jew. Yeshua comes to earth as a baby, as a man, and he lives a perfect life, and he becomes our korban, our perfect sacrifice. He takes the punishment so we don't have to. That's a concept that Jews don't recognize as being Jewish, but that's an extremely Jewish concept, that somebody else's death can atone for somebody else. You see it in the cities of refuge. I won't get into that, but when the high priest died, people who were in the city of refuge were forgiven. It's free. They're free. Right? At the death of the high priest. So at the death of a righteous man can atone for others. And we're seeing that in the Jonah story. Once he's thrown overboard, the seas calm down. Notice throughout Jonah chapter 1, it says in verse 4, the Lord hurled a great wind on the sea. Verse 5, and they hurled the cargo, which was in the ship. He said to them, lift me up and hurl me into the sea. So they lifted up Jonah, hurled him into the sea. There's a lot of hurling going on this boat. And as for the lifting up, we see a parallel there with John chapter 3, verse 14, 15. It says, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so the Son of Man be lifted up, that whosoever believes in him will have eternal life. All right? And in John 12:32, Jesus said, and I, if I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all to myself. So Jonah has to be lifted up and then thrown into the sea. Yeshua, Jesus, is making reference to him having been lifted up like this serpent on the pole. Remember back in the book of Numbers, I think 21. Jonah 1:14, this is the Gentiles, and we earnestly pray, O Lord, do not let us perish on account of this man's life. And do not put innocent blood on us for throwing him overboard. You notice that these Gentile sailors are now believing in God. In the parallel, look in Romans 11:11. This is what Paul is saying, I say then, did they not stumble so as to fall, did they? May it never be. But we're talking about the Jews here. But by their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make them jealous. So by the Jews' rejection of Yeshua, it was now opened up to the Gentiles. The point is, in this story, you have Jonah, who is the Jew in this story, and then you have and he's not praying and obeying his God, but all the Gentile sailors come to know the God of Israel, but not Jonah the Jew. And then you move forward with Israel. Israel is visited by Jesus, God himself, and Israel, they don't believe. You see, that's kind of ironic, isn't it? That in both stories, the Gentiles believe. When Jesus is rejected by the Jews, Christianity is then opened up to the Gentile world. It's the same picture as the Gentile sailors. Okay? There's just a lot of great parallels you see in this book of Jonah. And speaking of great, the Hebrew word for great is gadol. And throughout this book, you're going to see he has a great city, a great wind, a great tempest, a great fear, a great fish, the greatest. He's greatly displeased, greatly glad to become great. Great weaves through these 4 chapters of Jonah. Okay? Verse 16, the men feared the Lord greatly, and they offered a sacrifice to Yahweh and made vows. And the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow Jonah. And Jonah was in the stomach of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. You notice the word for fish is dog. It's spelled Dalet Gimel. Okay? But it's pronounced dog. This is why at the beginning we welcomed you to the talk on Jonah and the dog. You see the Hebrew word? No. All right. Now you got Jonah is thrown overboard, a fish has swallowed him. Let's look at the comparison between Jonah and the sailors. The sailors, when they're in trouble here, they're praying. They're the Gentiles, they're praying. Jonah, no prayer. The sailors are throwing cargo overboard, trying to save the ship. Jonah is asleep. The sailors have compassion for Jonah. They don't want to throw him overboard. They don't want to... Jonah's kind of indifferent about the whole thing. The sailors wanted to live. Jonah wants to die. The sailors, they want to find the source of their problem. They want to find the sin on this boat so they can get rid of it and calm the seas. Jonah, he doesn't want to stop sinning. He wants to keep sailing to Tarshish. Keep going the way you're not supposed to go. That's Jonah's philosophy. The sailors praise and worship God and make vows after the storm calls. Jonah, he doesn't worship God in any of this. The sailors feared God, and we don't see any evidence of fear from Jonah. Jonah 1:17, and the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow Jonah. Now that is what I call a miraculous salvation. Yes? And what about Israel? Do they have a miraculous salvation? With Jeremiah 30, verse 11, it says, I am with you and I will save you, declares Yahweh. Though I completely destroy all the nations among which I scatter you, I will not completely destroy you. I will discipline you, but only in due measure, and I will not let you go entirely unpunished. So both Jonah and Israel, look at the parallels between them. They're chosen by God, commissioned. They disobey the will of God. They're both found among Gentiles. Both the Gentiles believe, and both Jonah and Israel are going to get miraculous salvation. Unbelievably cool. Okay, Jonah chapter 2, verse 1, it says, Then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the stomach of the fish. Now, in chapter 2 of Jonah, it's going to take place in the belly of the fish. And it's a prayer. That's what chapter 2 is all about. He's praying for some kind of salvation because he's in the belly of a fish for disobedience. So, Jonah 2:3, it says, And he said, I called out of my distress to the Lord, and he answered me. I cried for help from the depth of Sheol. You heard my voice. For you had cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the current engulfed me. All your breakers and billows passed over me. Jonah 2:4. So I said, I have been expelled from your sight. Nevertheless, I will look again toward your holy temple. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Jonah's underneath the water, and this is what he prays. I'm expelled from your sight. Got it. Nevertheless, I will look again toward your holy temple. You know, if you go back to 1 Kings chapter 8, starting in verse 28, this is where Solomon built the temple and they're dedicating the temple. And Solomon's giving a prayer about the temple. And it says, starting in verse 28, Yet have regard to the prayer of your servant and to his supplication, O Lord my God, to listen to the cry and to the prayer which your servant prays before you today. Okay, Solomon's asking God to listen to his prayer. Verse 29, that your eyes may be open toward this house night and day, toward the place of which you have said, my name shall be there, to listen to the prayer which your servant shall pray toward this place. Verse 30, listen to the supplication of your servant and of your people Israel when they pray toward this place. Hear in heaven your dwelling place, hear and forgive. Isn't that interesting that Solomon prays at the dedication to hear prayers that are prayed toward the temple? And the first thing Jonah does when he's under the water is he directs his prayer toward God's holy temple. That's cool. Verse 5, water encompassed me to the point of death. The great deep engulfed me. Weeds were wrapped around my head. I descended to the roots of the mountains. The earth with its bars was around me forever. But you have brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. While I was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you into your holy temple. Those who regard vain idols forsake their faithfulness, but I will sacrifice to you with the voice of thanksgiving. That which I have vowed I will pay. Salvation is from the Lord. Verse 9, but I will sacrifice to you with a voice of thanksgiving. Salvation is from the Lord. That word for salvation there is Yeshuatah. And if you break it down, it's Yeshua, it's a tav, which is the cross, and it's a hey. Hey is something is going to be revealed. Yeshuatah, Jesus on the cross, revealed. That's the Hebrew word for salvation. Jesus saves. To which Jews reply, that's nice, Moses invests. Of all the prayers in the Bible, this is not, Jonah's is not the best prayer in the world. It's kind of even a little bit generic. It's a nice thing how he pointed out about praying toward the temple, which a specific prayer was made by Solomon, that prayers directed toward the temple would be heard and answered. So that was nice that Jonah pointed that out to us. The other thing about Jonah's prayer is it's very similar to another prayer that we see in Psalm 107. And let me point out this really cool thing in Psalm 107. Now you know, here are three Hebrew letters. Here's a Vav, here's a Nun, and here's the Nun Sophit. The Nun Sophit is the final Nun. Okay, so notice there is a difference between a Vav and a Nun Sophit, the final form Nun. Okay, here is the letter Nun, it's the end sound. Its picture is a fish. Well, that's a nice tie-in today. It's a fish, it represents life, right? The fish's tail goes up, down, up, down, up. It turns out that there are a few places in the Bible where God takes that letter Nun and he reverses it, or makes it an inverted Nun. Here you can see a picture of the inverted Nun. Got it? One's forwards, one's backwards. That inverted Nun doesn't show up too often, but there are about 9 places in the Bible where you have inverted Nuns. It's the book of Numbers, I think it's chapter 10, don't quote me, has 2 of them. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them in a row in Psalm 107, verses 20 through 25. Each line, each verse is followed by a Nun, which is backwards. And if you read these 6 verses, they have a similarity to what's going on in Jonah's life right here. Okay, let's just read them real quick. Psalm 107, verse 20. He sent his word and healed them and delivered them from their destruction. Inverted noon. 21. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his loving kindness and for his wonders to the sons of men. Inverted noon. Let them also offer sacrifices of thanksgiving and tell of his works with joyful singing. Inverted noon. That's the one he just got done saying he was going to praise God pay his vow of thanksgiving. How did he word it? I will sacrifice to you with a voice of thanksgiving. You see it? That's what Jonah is praying in his prayer. He's lifting that line from Psalm 22, Psalm 107, verse 22. Verse 23, those who go down into the sea in ships, who do business on great waters. Verse 24, they have seen the works of the Lord and his wonders in the deep. For he spoke and raised up a stormy wind, which lifted up the waves of the sea. You'll notice in Jonah's prayer, a lot of these lines he is lifted from David's prayer of Psalm 107. Let me give thanks to the Lord for his loving kindness. No, but let me offer sacrifices of thanksgiving. Those who go down in ships, who do business on the great waters. They have seen the works of the Lord and the wonders in the deep. He raised up a stormy wind. Okay, so Jonah 2:10. It says, then the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah up onto the dry land. The word vomit here I have in lime green. It's a kuf and an aleph. It's pronounced vayake. Vayake. The vi is and, yod is it, and it vomited. Okay. You see it there? And here's Jonah's name. You see it? Jonah. Got it? You know what? There's the word vomit, there's the word Jonah, and right in between Jonah and vomit is an Aleph Tav. Remember Aleph Tav? That's the first and the last. Aleph is God, Tav is the cross. This is God on the cross. This is a picture of Yeshua. This is that little word that appears thousands of times in the Bible. And the Jewish speaker, Hebrew speaker says, you must have this word in the sentence or the sentence doesn't make sense. But if you take the word out, no, the sentence doesn't make sense. This is Yeshua. This is Jesus. This is God. He is in all these important sentences. You understand? The Aleph Tav. So you have Ki, vomit. You have Jonah. And then you have Yeshua worms his way in between the Ki and the Jonah. Got it? And the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah up onto the dry land. Okay. It vomited Jonah onto the dry land. How cool is that? Okay, you know what? That's the end of chapters 1 and 2. So I think this is a good place to stop right now. And, you know, as a dog returns to its own vomit, according to 2 Peter 2:22, may you return for part 2 of this talk. May God get the honor, and may God get the glory, and may God get the praise. Thanks for watching. You're not going to believe how cool and prophetic chapters 3 and 4 are. See you soon. Bye-bye. We need now to give you a bonus. Now, I began this talk by calling it Jonah and the dog. What? Well, the Hebrew word for fish is pronounced dog. It's a dalet and a gimel. And this word fish, it shows up 3 times in this story here. In 1:17, it says, the Lord prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah. In 2:1, it says, then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the stomach of the dog. And then in 2:10, then the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah up onto the dry land. Now, I've told you before, I don't speak, read, or understand conversational modern Hebrew, right? So I don't know why this is what I'm going to show you here, but if you notice, in the middle one, in 2:1, it's spelled with a hey on the end, dagah. So maybe there's some kind of something going to be revealed, or maybe it's a structure in Hebrew that I don't understand, but for the most part, it's dalet, gimel, dog is fish, okay? I have a Chinese Hebrew cookbook, 101 Ways to Walk Your Dog. It's a seafood cookbook. Okay, and let's just, one last thing I want to point out, that there are only 2 books in the entire Tanakh, Old Testament, where no one dies. The Song of Solomon is one, and Jonah is the other. I think that's an interesting fact. All right. Okay, so we'll see you soon on part 2. God bless.